What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Tectonic Takes podcast. My name is Abel. Abram, how are you today?
I'm doing very well. I took a nap earlier. I'm ready. I'm excited. We haven't done this in a while. I love doing these, so yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah, it's definitely been a while, and I woke up really energized today. Hit the gym at 5 a.m. and I was like, prepare this podcast real well. Definitely excited to get back into this. But we have really, really special podcast. I wouldn't say that special, but it's something that hasn't happened this season yet, and that is a win on the road. Abram, we've been waiting for this. We've been praying for times like this.
Yeah, no, it's huge, and it's not just any win on the road. Anyone can go and beat. Well, actually, not anyone because we lost to like Colorado, we lost to LA Galaxy, but no, yeah, we won against a top team. We won against Seattle Sounders, who we have a slight rivalry with them, being like on the West Coast, and obviously they're really high on the table. So I'm very happy with that win.
And I'm glad you mentioned that they're very high on the table because now we're going to talk about kind of the expectations coming into that first game against Seattle because we're going to talk about both games on the road, which was Seattle and Colorado. So let's talk about that first game. We mentioned in a previous episode that the expectations for the Quakes, uh, they were, maybe we'll get a point against Seattle or LAFC, and definitely that game against Dallas. That was a 3 point game that was expected, but it didn't really come out to that. It was a 1-1 draw against Dallas, but most notably was that win against Seattle, who currently sits, I believe, second in the Western Conference. But then a draw against Colorado, and we'll go into those matches in depth in just a second here. But Abram, what are your initial thoughts on those games?
Against Seattle, I thought that we dominated early on. I think that we deserved to take the lead. We probably could have done it earlier. Um, I don't think. I think that a lot of Quakes fans are struggling with the philosophy of being defensive once we go up. And Lucia said that that's not something they're doing on purpose. That's kind of like a reaction to the other team. Obviously, if you go down a goal, you're going to be more attacking, try and get that goal back. And we have a good defense, and it's gotten us points. We wouldn't be where we are without the defensive quality we have in our team, just flat out.
Yeah,
And sorry, go ahead.
no, no. I was just gonna get into these lineups here because I think it was a really interesting matchup. Now that you're mentioning defense, considering the players that we had, so we'll go into the Seattle game first, and we'll look at Seattle's lineup. It was a 4-3-3 with Stephen Fry at goalkeeper, Nuhu, Xavier Arriaga, Jackson Reagan, and Alex Roldan made up the back line. Rusnik, Atencio, and Nicolas Lazaro made up the midfield. At the attack was Leo Chu, Eber, and Dylan Tevez. Jordan Morris was out due to injury, and Rui Diaz and Freddie Montero came off the bench later on in the game. Abram, this isn't the strongest Seattle team that we face. Would you agree?
Definitely. Yeah, it's a very strong team. Don't get me wrong; those players can definitely hold their own. But Seattle, we got them on a good day when they weren't at full strength. But I'm still really happy with how we performed against a still very strong Seattle team with a lot of big players in there.
Yeah, and one thing that they definitely have above us is depth, which we've mentioned in pretty much every episode. And I really don't want to get into it because it's literally every episode. It's like the
It's
depth of
depressing.
this team, you know. But
Yeah.
now we'll talk about this Quakes lineup. So Mensa was out, and we later learned that it was for breaking team, like team rules, club policy, and Cade Cowell and Nico Shakiris were out because they were playing in the U20 World Cup, which we'll get to at the end of this podcast. But the lineup was also a 4-3-3 with Daniel at goalkeeper, Truco, Beeson, Rodriguez, and Paul Marie made up the back line with Montero, Grueso, Jackson Yule in the midfield, and Benji Kikanovic in place of Cade Cowell, and Jeremy Abobasi and Espinosa in the attack. It's you know, if we were to put this lineup in previous games, we would have had our doubts. We've definitely had our doubts before, but they managed to come out with a 1-0 win, which is more than what we could have asked for. So in the first half, early on, the Quakes had chances from Christian Espinoza and Paul Marie, and Fry was pretty busy in those first few minutes of the game. uh, Stephen Fry with 9 clean sheets in the season. So it wasn't like we were going up against any goalkeeper. Fry, one of the best in the league, he has been for quite some time now. But the Sounders were also pretty dangerous with their crosses, and it felt like in the first half it was almost too easy that Seattle was just handing Quakes defenders a bunch of crosses and giving Daniel some things to work with. Would you agree?
Yeah, I was actually you're spot on with that. I think I was thinking that they're having a really hard time getting into it, even though they were at their home field. They were having a hard time getting into the game and getting things together. Leo Chu, especially, is someone who I was scared of going into this match, but he didn't. I think that he ended up. The biggest thing he did was nutmegging Palmieri, I believe, and then he got fouled after that. But really, Palmieri's done a great job all season, but he did a good job of nullifying that threat on the left hand side, or their left hand side, our right hand side.
Yeah, and that's what Seattle does, right? They have those players that can really make a difference. It doesn't matter where they play. Uh, they can come off the bench, right side, left side, anywhere. They can really just make the difference and take the game away from you. But they didn't account for Danielle, who had an amazing game. He had an amazing game against Seattle and Colorado, really cementing himself in that starting goalkeeper spot. But we'll get into that just a little bit as we talk about the second half. It was an early goal off a set piece. It was a Christian Espinoza cross, and then Jeremy Abobasi with his movement in the box sealed the deal right there at the 48th minute. And it was the second set piece in a row, or sorry, the second set piece goal in a row. Because if you recall the game in the game against Dallas, it was a header from Benji Kikanovic. It was a little confusing there. Some people thought it was Tanner Beeson who
Right.
headed the ball in, but that's 2 games in a row where the only goal that the Quakes scored came from a set piece, and it was specifically a corner kick. Do you think that that's an area of concern?
Yeah, I think that without Cade Cowell, things work differently. We thought that we were kind of shoehorning, siphoning all the balls through the right side through Christian Espinosa before. That's really the case now, where Kikanovic hasn't shown the explosive speed that he had last season, or just like the form in general. And Cade Cowell has really improved in a lot of ways, especially stretching the defense with offensive runs and also finding forward passes and trying to break the lines with his own passes. So we really miss him. We give him a lot of stick, but the left hand side doesn't look the same, and so we are going to the right even more, and so we really don't get a lot of good chances that aren't set pieces. The open play chances aren't really good quality, which is like a contrast to what we were seeing earlier on in the season.
Right. And in the context of the past 4 games, it's really apparent that we're missing something because if we go back to the LAFC game, that goal from Trauco was weird, right? It was like he meant to cross it, but it somehow went in. And then against Dallas, it was a corner kick against Seattle, and then we don't score against Colorado. So, uh, the, when Cade Cowell returns, it could be different, but we don't really want to rely on one player, right? So, it could be an area of concern if even after we have a full squad for the next game, we're still experiencing these problems. So I think it it could be an area of concern, but I'm pretty sure Lucci and the rest of the squad is working on it because this isn't really a team that will have these types of problems for a long time. I think that's what's really making the difference for the Quakes this season. But yeah, the game against Seattle ended with these stats. which is a 62% possession for the Sounders, 10 corners for the Sounders, and 23 total shots for Seattle. So the total expected goal was 29 for Seattle to 1 for the San Jose Earthquakes. And that just kind of it sums up everything that we just talked about for the past minute. But let's talk
You
about,
said 29 expected goals.
sorry, 2.9. Sorry.
Okay, I was like,
I was
no way,
like,
Jesus,
yeah. It's like when you
they didn't
play.
score any. God dang.
It's like when you play FIFA against your little cousin, huh? No, that my bad. 2.9 expected
Okay,
goals to 1. But yeah, now let's talk about our goalkeeper, Danielle.
yeah.
What do you have to say about him?
Um, I kind of want to say I told you so, because Daniel came in and you and I we had a discussion before we saw him touch the field. There's a reason he's here. You know, I looked at his numbers in Brazil; they're very good. Um, I know Jamin Moore has covered this in the past, where the reason that he was kicked out and kicked to the curb is because the second keeper at Internacional performed even better than him. Uh, the numbers I'm referencing are Daniel had less goals conceded against him than games played, which is a very good stat. You know, and we couldn't say the same for JT, unfortunately, because we had a poor defense. But obviously, JT is a very good keeper in his own right, and so it creates a very strong battle because I think that we can win. We can make the playoffs with either of them as our number one, and I'm very glad to be able to say that because we haven't been able to say that before.
Right, and I think this is something that I've mentioned before. Competition in any spot for the Quakes is one of the best things that could happen to the team, and with such security in goal, with a good defense in front of it, it's really, it makes you wonder. It makes you see how far this team has come since the appointment of Lucci. And honestly, I can say I can sit here and talk a lot of good things about the goalkeeping situation, but let's be honest, the first two performances from Daniel weren't entirely convincing, and I think it's really fitting that you say "I told you so" because a lot of people share the same beliefs. Why do we bring in a goalkeeper when JT is just as capable of doing what he does? Then we bring in this goalkeeper who really didn't convince anyone in the first few moments that he was on the field. So I think it's really good that he's really showing why we brought him into the Bay Area. And like I said, it's really good for the team that this is happening. But now let's move on to the game against Colorado. So, do you have any final thoughts, Abram?
No, I mean, it you. I did want to comment on the fact that Daniel was concerning in the first few matches, and I'm not, pretending that throwing the ball off of the defenders, their attacker's head, is a normal thing to do.
Right.
And he did, do some weird things, but he never really got a chance to show his shot stopping ability, and that's what he thrives at. And that's all I really want to say on that. But yeah, we can go into Colorado now.
For sure. So Colorado had a lineup of 3-4-2-1. That was according to the MLS stream, the graphic that was shown at the beginning, but it was pretty flexible. So at goalkeeper they had Illich, and then at defense they had Bombito, Wilson, and Maxo. Though Keegan Rosenberry was dropping into that right back position, and he probably had the best game out of the entire Rapid squad. And then at midfield we had Sam Nicholson, Brian Acosta, and Connor Ronan, and in the attack, Jonathan Lewis and Cole Bassett supporting Kevin Cabral up front. For San Jose, there was no change in their lineup from their win against Seattle, and it's like the saying goes: "If it ain't broke, don't fix it." So that
Right.
lineup worked against Seattle, but it wasn't entirely convincing against Colorado. And this is when we start getting into this is the same quakes that we've seen on the road prior to that Seattle game, right? It was
Yeah.
like, oh, we had 3 points on the road against a rival and a team that one of the top in the West, one of the top teams in MLS. Period. And then we go back to this. It's a little disappointing. we're not gonna lie, it's a little disappointing, but there are a couple of things to note about the match. So let's start with the first half. So let's face it, the Rapids, they're not the best team in the West, but they did look pretty decent at the start of the first half. Do you think, Abram, that this was pure luck because of how because of whatever curse the Quakes have on the road, or do you actually think that they were playing well and they had good tactics?
Look, you mentioned the curse. I think that it's not just playing on the road. It is specifically that plain gray jersey that we wear at our away games, and I think it's a cool jersey, man. But God, it's really messing us up because I believe that we wore our home kit against Seattle at
Mhm.
Lumen Field, and then we wore our white at Colorado. And look at the difference, man. Like with both were away games, and one is a significantly not as good team, and we couldn't string a few passes together. We looked really lethargic. We and I mean I think that the altitude played a role. For me, I struggle at altitude when doing anything, so I can't imagine playing a full 90 minutes. But it was kind of it was very disappointing, especially the fact that we ended up a man up at I believe 50 minutes.
Yeah. No hate to whoever designed the jersey. I love the jersey. Don't get me wrong, the creator jersey, amazing. I still want to get my hands on one, but we don't really feel too. How do I even say this? Like when we see the team wear those jerseys, we don't necessarily get the best feeling, right? It's like, oh, we're wearing the creator kits again. Ugh.
Yeah,
But credit where credit's due. Colorado was looking pretty decent in the first half. You mentioned the altitude. That is the one thing about MLS is that you can be playing in the snow one day, and then you can be literally at the other side of the country playing in different, entirely different conditions, which I
yep,
think is pretty unique to the MLS. That could definitely play a role, and I'm pretty sure it plays a role in all matches in this league. But going back to the first half, there's a big save from Danielle off of a header. I believe it was from Bassett. And Colorado missed a huge opportunity right there. So Danielle again showing off his capabilities at shot stopping and just being the big man in between the posts. And speaking of posts, Benji Kikanovic hits the bar, sorry, not the bar, but the left post at the 37th minute. Abram, do you know which play I'm talking about?
yeah. I couldn't be there to see that moment live, but I did see it on the replay. It was very unfortunate. I think that was the closest thing we had to a shot on target all game. Uh, I believe that we had zero shots on target.
Correct. We didn't have a single shot on target. We did have two shots to the post though. One of them came off the second half off a header from Jeremy Abobasi. So in the second half, Bombito goes off in the 51st minute over a foul on Paul Marie. It was a second yellow. There was a little bit of controversy around it because it seemed like, it might have been a soft foul, or maybe you can call the foul and not the yellow card. And that left Colorado with 10 men. Abram, what do you think? Do you think it was deserving of a red card?
You know how I feel. We were in the group chat when that happened. We were celebrating, even though, no, if I was the referee, being impartial, I would not have given him another yellow card. It was definitely a foul. He missed the ball and it was accidental. So for that reason, I wouldn't have given it. Especially when you consider what's at stake. You know, if you give him a yellow, he's getting sent off. And so for me, I wouldn't have done so, but I'll definitely take it. I'm very happy that it happened. I think that if maybe they had 11, we would have maybe conceded another another extra time goal. So yeah, it's unfortunate that we couldn't take advantage of that. But yeah, that's how it goes
Right,
in the
and
creator
despite
kit at
being
least.
yeah, and despite being a man up, there was no goal. and the match ended in a stalemate 0-0. The closest we got was the header that I mentioned in the 62nd minute from Jeremy Bobasi, which was, I believe, later ruled offside, so it wouldn't have counted anyways. But then Barrios, who
Yeah.
came on for Colorado after the red card, he was booked initially for simulating a penalty, um, which I think was the key moment in the game. That was when uh, the referee ended up reviewing the play on VAR and basically seeing that he didn't dive, so he actually gave him the penalty. And then when everything seemed like it was just going downhill for the Quakes, man up, not scoring, and then conceding a penalty, Daniel comes up big once again in the 70th minute. He blocks the penalty. I mean, scenes.
Yeah, it was great. It was an awesome moment, and I think that Quakes fans. I don't know when how much time he has on his contract, but we will always remember that save that rescued us a point in Colorado. It was a great save. I mean, it wasn't a great penalty, but I mean, you still have to save it. You still have to go the right way. And it's always really tough as a goalkeeper having to save a penalty. The odds are always stacked against you, but he managed to come up big for us there.
Yeah, and it was definitely the defining moment because that goal goes in, and you're back to like I said, being the Quakes that we've known this whole season as
Right.
the Quakes on the road.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we didn't lose, which is why this is groundbreaking. Right, this hasn't happened before where we get a win and just like an overall positive or net positive result on the road. Let's talk a little bit about these stats from the Colorado game. It was split possession and also split shots pretty much. There wasn't a whole lot separating the two teams in terms of stats. It was really one of those games where you have to really watch and pay attention to see where the differences were. But one thing that really sticks out to me was that Colorado had 5 shots on target, and like you mentioned, Abram, no shots on target for San Jose. What do you make of that?
I mean, it's a problem. Um, we were last season. We were an exciting team to watch when we had the ball, and I thought that bringing in Grezzo and Mensa and all these defensive reinforcements would make us have more liberty to continue attacking. But the system which we play, it's I don't know what it is because Lucci insists that he's not trying to keep us from attacking, but something about it. Maybe it's. I think you know what. A big part of that the problem is Jamiro Montero and his more reserved role, having to do more dirty work than he did last season, where he was more of a number 10. Now he's like an 8.5, where he's like he does attack, but he's kind of like another box to box similar to Jackson Yule.
Yeah, Jamir Montero, and it was notable from the very beginning of the season. We were seeing that Jamir Montero wasn't carrying the ball as much as we're used to seeing him, or when he was dribbling, it was in a much more conservative way than we're used to seeing. So it's definitely something that he's had to adapt to. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing, but when you look at games like this where we can use a little bit of more push offensively, it's clear that we have a tool right there with Jamir Montero to create a lot of attacking chances and connect with our wingers and Jeremy Bobasi, but that's not happening. And I think it's about time we start looking into how can we get Jamir Montero into a more attacking position in order to get those results. But now moving on into kind of where this leaves us, I think 4 out of 6 points in the context of everything is a wonderful result. I feel like
Yep.
we've been analyzing this and mentioning the pros and the cons of pretty much both games, but is this a positive result? I mean, we couldn't have asked for anything better considering how the team has performed in away games. So I really think that this is one of the best moments in the season for them.
Yeah, I mean we're in a really good spot, and we're already spoiled as a fan base, we think that we should be like up there competing like for second place. Like we don't have the
Right.
depth for that, first of all, and we were like dead last, man. Like we weren't a competitive team at all last season. We changed the way we play. We changed personnel. We're a much better team. We seem to forget that every time we don't win, and it's I get it. We want to win every game, and we don't want to like be on the defensive end all the time. But I'm so happy to be able to go into the next game think we could win this. Where last time it was just like I just hope we don't lose by too many goals this time.
Exactly. And now this season we have the luxury of going through a pretty bad game or a disappointing result and being, we'll just, move on to the next one and hopefully that'll be a better result. And based on the patterns throughout the season, the next game does tend to be a better result. So going into the next game against Philadelphia, the Quakes and the whole fan base feels good, and that's something that hasn't happened in a really long time. Like you said, last season this wasn't happening. We would lose a game and expect to lose the next game. We were dead last at the bottom of the the overall
Right.
table in the West. So we're in, the Quakes are in a really good position. And I think one thing to also mention is that they didn't choke. They didn't choke any of the two games. They held on to the result, whether it was a win or a draw. They didn't concede in the last few minutes of the game, and I think that is a massive improvement from previous games. It's just something that's been happening for too long, and it's become synonymous with the Quakes conceding at the very last minutes of a half. So I think it's really
Yep.
good that this time that didn't happen, and they managed to keep the result, which I think has been, it's robbed the San Jose of a few points this season.
Yeah, I saw that we would be in first place if we didn't concede an extra time. That's a stat I saw. I don't know how true that is. I haven't done the math, but from that perspective, I see why people are upset that we're not first place. But I mean, you still have to look at like the context of everything, like us as an organization, not just like those games.
Right, and I think that could probably be interpreted different ways. You know, definitely, I don't think the Quakes is a team that deserves to be in first place. I
No,
definitely think that there's better games out there, better teams out there, but we're definitely one of the best in the West, and I can live with that.
yeah, and I also want to say real quick that the fact that we have like going into stoppage time, the opportunity to have that stat is a positive. You know what I mean? Like the fact that if those things didn't happen, like if we didn't concede an extra time and you know, God, I just lost my train of thought. But like, it's a good thing that we were at one point in the pole position to be able to get those results, like against Atlanta, against the Red Bull. Like we lost those games, but we were winning those games, and I don't know, it's just there's a lot of positive take from the season, and I'm not seeing enough positive from the fan base side of things, which is unfortunate. But I think that we're going to continue to grow.
Definitely, and I think that's just with every fan base or pretty much with every person.
Yeah,
If there's something that's stopping you from your full potential, which in this case for the Earthquakes is being one of the top teams in MLS, then we're just gonna focus on that, right? It's like, oh, the
yeah,
goals in stoppage time, that's what's killing us, and that's just what you hear. But all of that aside, the Quakes are doing pretty well. I think this is, like I said, really great result for them. But now moving on into some other news, we have some Earthquake players in Argentina who played in the U20 World Cup, and they were making a lot of noise. Cade Cowell and Nico Shakiris were just more so Cade Cowell. He was tearing it up in the U20 World Cup. Unfortunately, the United States did crash out against Uruguay, right?
yes,
Yes, they did crash out against Uruguay in the quarterfinals. But I think considering the performances from the team and from specific players, I don't think it's something to be disappointed about. Obviously, the U.S. were a lot of people consider them to be a top four team in this tournament. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, but there's still a lot of positive things to take away from that, especially Cade Cowell and Nico Shakiris getting on the score sheet for different games. Well, Nico Shakiris only scored once, and that was against Slovakia. But Cade Cowell was definitely tearing it up. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Cade he was one of the best players in the whole tournament in terms
Mhm.
of goal contributions. He wasn't just scoring; he was getting assists as well. Him and a former Quakes Academy player, Diego Luna, were really tearing it up. Every defense they came against had a lot of trouble closing them down. Kate Cowell scored some really nice goals. They weren't just tap in; they were like solo runs, and they were nice goals. And I think that we're going to have a lot of eyes on him. We always say that people are watching him, but I think this is one of those events that like really showcases the talent of a young player.
Most definitely. And we should also shout out Diego Luna, who currently plays for RSL, but he was also one of the best players. He had a number of assists. He was definitely one of the best players in that squad. But let's not forget that Diego Luna is a Bay Area native, and he did go through the ranks of the San Jose Earthquakes Academy. So I guess you could say that the Earthquakes were pretty much responsible for, I wouldn't say fully responsible, right? But they did definitely had a huge part in that U20 World Cup, which unfortunately came to an end for the United States. But now we'll be watching the upcoming semifinals, which I believe will be uh, South Korea, right?
I
Israel.
don't know. As soon as we got knocked out, I stopped watching.
Oh,
I
I'm
have no
sure a
idea.
lot of people feel the same way because I mean
Yeah,
it's the U20 World Cup. But looking at the next games here, it's Uruguay versus Israel, which will be on June 8th, uh, followed by Colombia versus. Oh no, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the old one, the old quarterfinal results. It'll be Italy versus South Korea. So definitely a lot of young talent there. Something that I'll be keeping my eyes on. But unfortunately, we won't be seeing our Quakes players anymore.
no. But I did want to ask you, Abel, just like as an opinion, from your opinion as a Quakes fan, is it worth it to bring back Diego Luna? Like
Ooh,
how much gam would be too much gam for GM Abel if you were in that position? If you were in Chris Leash's position, what was the like top dollar? Because I think that he works well with Kate Carroll. We know that he's a very creative player. He could play on the wing. He play left wing. He play in the center. Um, and like you said, he's a Bay Area native, and I think with how the things work, we might be able to work out a homegrown deal. I'm not sure, but that would mean, if I were correct, that he would have no impact on the salary cap.
yeah, that's tough because he would definitely add valuable depth to the squad, but I'm not sure if he would be a starter, right? And we're talking about
No,
a 19-year-old player who, you know, he plays for RSL,
he
but
doesn't play
he
for RSL. He plays. He's a contracted to RSL, but he doesn't play because they don't suit his system. They don't play with the 10. So that's the thing.
exactly.
If he's not playing, he come over here. We got time for him.
So you know, it if we buy him, I think it puts everything else in like a weird position.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I would bring him back. Maybe under the right conditions, I would. The right conditions being that we're really missing like a someone in that number 10 position, but we already have Nico Shakiris, who in the midfield can do
Right.
a whole lot better, in my opinion. I'm
Hmm.
sure that's a tectonic take for anyone who's familiar with Diego Luna. But I think uh, so. Transfer market, I believe, has him at a price of 1 million euros. I
Hmm.
think that's too high, in my opinion, for a 19-year-old player who isn't even playing for his team.
Yeah. No.
Uh,
Like barely any appearances this season.
exactly. And don't get me wrong, he's a great player, but I just don't think that it's worth bringing him on right now.
Yeah, unfortunately, I agree with you. This isn't FIFA career mode. As much as it would be nice to have like all the good U.S. talents like Cade, Nico, and also Luna on top of that, it's really not realistic. And it would take time away from those players, which is the biggest no for me. You know, I don't want Nico to sit on the bench even more than he already is. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's fun to think about, but unfortunately, it doesn't work out.
definitely. It's a good little thought experiment. But now moving on, something that just happened recently. The whole MLS is in shambles. Actually, no, they're not, because most people are pretty happy about this result. But the CONCACAF Champions League resulted in Leon being crowned as the champions, which means that a Mexican team is back on top and they will be headed to the Club World Cup. What are your thoughts on the match?
Um, I didn't. I wasn't able to watch it. I was
Bro, me
busy.
neither.
Uh, I cover Quicks too for anyone who doesn't know, and they were happening at the same time. I know it's weird that somebody were watching MLS Next Pro game over the Concacaf Champions League final, but no, I didn't get to watch the game. Um, in terms of rivalry, I'm happy that LAFC didn't get the win. In terms of the league, I would have been happy to see an MLS team win because you know this as a Liga MX fan. They don't take MLS seriously at all, and it's a little bit frustrating at times because it's just kind of like blind to the quality that we have. And so I would have liked to see, you know, an MLS team prove themselves. I would have preferred it to be Philly, but it is what it is. They got to the final. LAFC deserved their results. So, but yeah,
Yeah, I mean, as someone who watches Liga MX, I'm pretty happy with the result. I do support a lot of Mexican soccer, so I was definitely happy to watch a Liga MX team lift the trophy and go back to the Club World Cup. Um, but not a whole lot to say about the match. I forgot who said it in the press conference, but they said that Liga MX teams play with no tactics, which I thought was a really wild statement to make before they played Leon. Uh, but I think that in hindsight that's pretty embarrassing because you say that the team has no tactics and then the team with no tactics goes out and beats you two times in a final,
yeah,
in a high stakes final. That's pretty embarrassing. But
yeah,
I think that speaks a lot about Liga MX teams in general. Don't underestimate them. U.S. soccer is definitely growing, but there's still a lot of catching up to do. I think in terms of each team kind of being on par with Liga MX. I think there's definitely still a lot of work to do. But that about does it for CONCACAF. Uh, Abram, you mentioned Quakes 2 briefly. Do you mind going a little bit more deep into that?
I'm sorry you cut off a bit. What'd you say?
Sorry. Do you mind going a little deep into Quakes 2 and their recent matches?
Yeah, so Quakes 2 followed the first team to Colorado. They also played against Colorado. Um, contrast to the MLS team, Colorado 2 is top of the MLS Next Pro table. Um, and so they're their team to beat, and it shows on the field. They're very a very talented group of young players. It was a tough game. We were dominating for most of the match. We were up 2-0, and just like the first team, they ended up giving up two goals. The last one came in the last minute of stoppage time, and we went to penalties, which is the rule in MLS Next Pro. If the game ends in a tie in regular time, we go to penalties. And unfortunately, um, Rapids were able to win in penalties. So Quakes didn't actually lose. They they did get a point, but it still feels like a loss. And they were actually prior to this game undefeated on the road, which is another contrast to the first team, who really struggled on the road and only has one win so far. But yeah, we have a lot of really talented guys who I believe could make the step to the first team. Cam Silly is a player that I would watch out for to be rising in the ranks. Daniel Mooney plays often for them. I think that he's a really bright young center back or right back, as we saw him play against Seattle. Um, and underrated shout would be Roberto Hadigan, the very
Mhm.
skilled right winger, who I think could back up Espinosa if something were to happen to him and we needed another right winger. Um, but yeah, I think that the table doesn't show it, but we've been playing well. Unfortunately, the results haven't been going our way. It's just like a rough turn of luck, but they're very good young players.
Definitely, there's definitely a lot to see there in the Quakes too. I would recommend you guys to definitely take a look and into going into a Quakes 2 match. I think it's a lot of fun, and we're also going to be trying to integrate a lot of Quakes 2 content. So Abram takes care of Quakes 2 for Tectonic Takes, and also Area Sports. So we always got you guys with those exclusive interviews, whether it's Abram, myself, or Fabi occasionally. He also goes down to those Quakes 2 matches. We always got you guys with those exclusive interviews, news, articles, all of that good stuff. And yeah, I believe that pretty much does it for this week's episode. Next home game will be against Philadelphia, and hopefully it'll be with a loaded squad now. It should be a really good game. I expect the atmosphere to be pretty good. But yeah, Abram, you want to drop your socials real quick?
Yeah, if you're on Twitter, you can go follow me at l e like the Spanish L underscore bombastic BAMBASTIC. I live tweet every Quakes 2 game. I throw my thoughts up there. I put a halftime analysis. I usually have articles. I haven't had one recently. I've been very very busy. Work has just like been been really pushing me, but yeah, make sure to follow me on there.
Yeah, definitely give Abram a follow. In terms of Quakes 2 media, he's definitely at the top of the game. You should definitely read his articles. And you can also follow me on Instagram at abel.anguiano. It's Abel Anguiano. And then on Twitter, underscore ABELANGUIANO. I haven't posted a whole lot of content recently because there's a whole lot of stuff going on with my life that I have to take care of. But I just recently ended my internship with NBC Bay Area and Telemundo 48. That was a whole lot of fun. May or may not go back. Deciding on that. I have a lot of things to work out before. But
Mm-hmm.
I'll be posting a lot of content soon, whether it's Quakes or CONCACAF content coming up for area sports. There will definitely be something there. I also just joined the Daily Cal, which is the UC Berkeley student newspaper, and I'll be reporting on some of their sports. So definitely give me a follow so you can keep up with all that. And also follow Tectonic Takes on all of the social media platforms, Instagram and Twitter at Tectonic
And
Takes.
TikTok.
And TikTok, yes. TikTok. There'll definitely be some
Yeah,
stuff going on there. Abram's been doing these pack openings. I don't know if you guys have watched them on Instagram Live, but one of the first ones that he did, I got this Cade Cowell card from guess for guessing correctly. Remember?
yeah,
So
yeah.
that was
Abel
pretty
won the
cool.
competition and ended up with a special card. I gave him a Wando card also as a bonus
That was
for
so cool.
guessing more correctly than anyone else. Right, and yeah, it's probably the best part of my job that I get to buy cards and I get to have a platform to open them. Yeah, definitely come check that out. It's a lot of fun for me. People who have showed up also seem to enjoy it. I do have another pack coming for anyone who does regularly join those streams. We're going to open another big box. So, yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm not a huge card collector, but honestly, you got me hooked on those Instagram lives that you do. These are really fun to watch. Just to watch you open and see what kind of cards you got. That Chicharito, really rare card the other day, right?
Yeah,
Only five
I,
of them
I
made.
I ended up selling that for
Ooh,
$20. A piece of
dude,
cardboard, dude, for $20. Yeah, it's crazy.
$20.
It's a really good. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say it's just a whole lot of fun. So if you guys haven't watched those,
Yeah.
definitely follow Tectonic Takes on Instagram. And whenever you see us go live, that's probably Abram doing a pack opening. Highly recommend that you guys take part of it and guess a player in the pack so you can win a card because we don't want you guys to say that we're biased and I end up with all the cards. We definitely want to. This is definitely a community thing, but yeah, Abram, thank you so much for hanging out with me and doing this podcast today.
Sure, I always love doing it. We're gonna keep doing it till the end of the season.
Of course, man. There's only one thing left to say. Go Quakes.
Go Quakes.